So this is the second part of the grand challenges in AI for nature and climate. So we said grand challenges are those that are not being funded by the normal channels, and they are not things that can be solved by one or two people. You need to identify the big problems. Sometimes they are about policy change for climate and nature. They are about systemic changes needed for climate and nature. What does that mean? That means you want to monitor greenhouse gases, you want to reduce greenhouse gases, you want to decarbonize the system. For nature, you want biodiversity conservation and many other things. And now you are talking about AI for nature and climate, and you are saying grand challenges in the application of AI. So you have to make sure that the AI is ready, it's technically ready, it's deployable, and actually the funding, if you define a good grand challenge problem in AI for nature and climate, for climate and nature, then you make sure that your work, your outcome is decided by the so-called theory of change, so that before you start anything, before you define a grand challenge, you have an outcome in mind, and that outcome is so important that it will induce systemic changes that are needed, transformational changes sometimes we call them, and policies to make sure that these are sustained and so on. So it sounds kind of fuzzy, but yet it's very important because teamwork is needed. Big problems require big teams, and big funding and regular fundings don't always work for them. It's appropriate that the Bezos Earth Fund is doing this. Schmidt Futures that I mentioned before is doing this. There is the some other institutes, Frontier Institute, whatever it is. Sorry about that. You can, I've discussed it next in the next podcast that we'll look at, which is identifying emerging technologies and their applications, and trying to make sure that teams come together and funding comes together and so on. So, it's kind of a time of Copernican revolution, where people were sitting in a lab, microscope, telescope, and doing inventions, discoveries. But now we need to solve these global Earth system problems, nature and climate. So we need to come together in big groups, and we need to find big money to do this, but they must be focused on outcomes, theory of change. Okay, that's what is new about this.